The second incarnation of the Twilight Zone, also known as the New Twilight Zone, ran from 1985 to 1989 and was the first of multiple revival series. It certainly has its fans, but it's little seen and in my opinion deserves to be talked about more than it is. When it initially began, each episode ran for 45 minutes and consisted of 2 to 3 different segments, but later in the series they changed to simple contained episodes in a 30-minute time slot. So this video is going to be ranking full-length episodes along with specific segments since they're all individual stories. There's numerous noteworthy episodes, which makes the entire series worth watching at least once. I was almost tempted to make this a top 25, but for the sake of time, this will be the 20 that in my opinion are the highlights in order from great to greatest. Also, before I get started, how sick is the opening theme to this version of the Twilight Zone? Dreams for Sale is the second segment of Season 1, Episode 2, starring Meg Foster and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. This one is a short 8-minute segment, but immediately becomes one of the creepiest episodes in the series. A family is having a picnic and the wife is seeing reality begin to unravel in a surreal way. Her husband keeps repeating things, food she withdraws from the basket disappears, her family's speech slows and distorts.
You okay, honey?
Yes. I guess so. It's the strangest thing.
You okay, honey?
You just asked me that.
You okay, honey?
The directing and editing makes this a very eerie watch, and the reveal of what's truly going on makes it all the more disturbing. The After Hours is the opening segment to Season 2, Episode 4, directed by Bruce Malmuth, original air date October 18th, 1986. It's a remake of the 34th episode of the original series. There are remakes from the 80's series I think are inferior to the original, like A Game of Pool, but this one's execution is more chilling to me. A young woman named Marcia arrives at a shopping mall looking to purchase something just as they are closing. She pleads to be let inside and is given access by a strange man. While in the mall, she's followed by strangers who all know her name.
Take me with you when you go, please. I'm ready.
Excuse us. Wait, what did he mean?
I won't give away the ending, but it's refreshing for there to actually be a twist. I'm making this video since I consider the 80's series underrated, but one thing I noticed revisiting it is it's mostly missing that irony of the original series. A lot of episodes don't end with the reveal and could have easily been episodes of Tales from the Dark Side or any show like that. A Message from Charity, directed by Paul Lynch and starring Robert McNeil and James Cromwell. This is the first segment of Season 1, Episode 6, which aired November 1st, 1985. It's about 2 teenagers in Massachusetts separated by 185 years of time. A bright but lonesome boy, Peter Wood, who lives in 1985, and a girl, Charity Payne, who lives in a Puritan colony in 1700. After they each come down with the same fever, they gain the ability to communicate with each other telepathically. Their relationship is very sweet. As Charity can see through his eyes and taste of his lips, Peter shows her the wonders of the modern world. But things begin to take a dark turn when word of Charity hearing voices spreads and she's accused of being a witch. One of her accusers tries to use his authority to take advantage of her, and when she refuses, he demands she be burned at the stake. I won't reveal the rest of the plot. It unfolds in a very engaging way and is probably produced as well as it could have been given the time and budget. It's based on a short story of the same name by William Lee, and I definitely think it should be adapted into a feature film. Many, Many Monkeys is the 26th episode of Season 3 and the latest one this video is going to cover. There were only 4 more episodes till the 3rd season ended and then the series was officially cancelled. It's directed by Rujad Bugaisky, original air date March 18th, 1989. The episode is set in a hospital and takes place over the course of 6 days. An epidemic of blindness is spreading throughout the world. It's a moral tale about the callous way we treat each other. It isn't a disease that's circulating, but the result of us turning a blind eye to the cold-hearted way we treat one another. Fun fact about this episode, it was originally written for the final season of the original Twilight Zone. CBS bought the script but ended up shelving it due to them finding it too grotesque. I like the episode's tone and pacing. It's reflective on humanity and makes you think twice about the person you ignore or the meaningless argument you have with a loved one. We have to look at the big picture and remember we all deserve some patience and understanding sometimes. Wordplay is the first segment of Season 1, Episode 2, original air date October 4th, 1985. Directed by Wes Craven and guest starring Annie Potts, who you'll recognize from Ghostbusters and Pretty in Pink. The plot of this episode is super simple. We see the world through the eyes of the main character, and slowly the language of everyone around him begins to transform into being unrecognizable. Our English words are still there, but they each take completely different meanings. The word light bulb might mean tired, or the word feeling might mean doctor, so on and so forth.
How much you have?
9.
9?
I know, that's quite a few for a small dog like an encyclopedia. But Ginger came through like a champ.
You said encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Ginger is an encyclopedia?
Last time I looked, she was.
It may take us a little longer to learn it, but we got the one thing only time can give you. Mayonnaise.
Yes. May I speak to Doug Seaver, please?
Well, I've been asking her out, and she finally says okay. She's gonna be here in 5 minutes, and I can't think of any place that'd take her for dinosaur. I mean, I thought of the Capitol Inn, but it might look like I'm trying too hard. What do you think?
You're planning to take this girl out for dinosaur, huh?
That's right.
Dinosaur?
The concept could have been very silly, but it's executed in a way that becomes kind of disturbing. The main character loses communication with all those around him, including his wife and child, which is very reminiscent of someone who suffered a serious stroke and has to rebuild their mind from scratch. It's also alike to someone being uprooted to a foreign country and being forced to lose the language they know in favor of the majority. It's well acted and very well directed. The Road Less Traveled is the 7th episode of Season 2, starring Cliff DeYoung and directed by Wes Craven, original air date December 18th, 1986. This is one of many episodes that has to do with Vietnam, since this is just that era where so many of these directors were around for it. Jeff is a man with a wife and child who years prior dodged the draft by moving to Canada, something he still feels guilt about. A legless, wheelchair-bound man begins to appear in his home that turns out to be the version of himself that did fight in Vietnam. So each version of Jeff is able to take a look at what their life could have been. Cliff DeYoung does a great job in this dual role and has a solid supporting cast playing his family.
You know, I lost everything important to me a long time ago. I lost my legs, I lost my girl, I lost my future. I even lost Jeff.
I'd like to make a note that this one was cut down from 45 minutes to 24, which is a big difference. Some of the deleted scenes were included on the DVD. Dead Run is the second segment of Season 1, Episode 19, starring Steve Railsback and directed by Paul Tucker, original air date February 21st, 1986. Johnny is a truck driver who lost his job due to too many accidents.
Pete, what am I going to do? It was the last insurance company to take a risk on me. And I won't drive without insurance.
So stop driving.
I can't. That's what I do, man. I don't know nothing else.
Out of desperation, he takes a job that turns out to be transporting souls to hell. He then finds out these people have not been judged by God, but by a strict upper management employee who's taken it upon himself to decide who's to be cast to damnation. The first half of this episode has a nice, creepy vibe. Hell's employees have cool makeup designs and seem very threatening. This is exactly what I would have wanted to watch late at night had I been around in the mid-80s. And I had forgot till I was rewatching this for my research that John LeMay shows up in a small role. I'm a big fan of his from Friday the 13th the series and Jason Goes to Hell. This is one more that could possibly make a good movie. Grace Note is the second segment of Season 1, Episode 23, directed by Peter Medic, original air date April 4th, 1986. It's about an opera singer named Rosemary in the 1960s who aspires to make it big. She has a sister named Mary who's sick with leukemia. Mary tries to encourage Rosemary to chase her dreams, but Rosemary's doubtful such things are possible.
Good. Because when you're an opera star, And you travel all over the world. I know you will.
When a shooting star happens to pass by, Mary makes a wish. The next day, Mary's taken to the hospital as her illness is taking its toll. She tells Rosemary her wish is coming true and to follow the music.
It's my wish. Follow the music and you'll see.
Rosemary leaves the hospital and is transported 20 years into the future, where she then visits the Met and sees herself on stage delivering a great performance to a packed house. I love the actors playing Rosemary, and I guess I'm always a sucker for these sentimental episodes. The basic theme of the episode says how, if we sometimes saw ourselves the way that people who care for us do, we'd believe in ourselves and realize our capabilities. It's a great episode, and I guess the only thing keeping it from being higher on the list is not too much happens. After what I described, Rosemary goes to the hospital, is transported back to 1966, and has one last conversation with her sister on her deathbed. And then she goes on to try to achieve her aspirations. We don't know too much else about the characters, and there's hardly anyone else in the episode. I think it'd work better if it had been 45 minutes. Her Pilgrim Soul, first segment of Season 1, Episode 12, directed by Wes Craven, original air date December 13th, 1985. This story follows a scientist named Kevin designing a holographic projector. While he and his partner are at the lab one day, the device generates the image of a human fetus, much to their shock. When they return the next day, the baby has already matured into a young girl who introduces herself as Nola, living in early 20th century Westchester, New York. Kevin and his partner deduce she's aging roughly 10 years every day, and that the soul of one Nola Granville entered the machine. Our main character, Kevin, is having severe marital issues and begins spending all his time at the lab with Nola, where the older she gets, the more of her life she remembers and relates it to Kevin. This episode to me is one of the best things Wes Craven ever directed. It's a very touching story, and with the exception of the first and youngest incarnation of Nola, all the acting is top-notch. Practically seeing the span of someone's entire life play out before him teaches Kevin valuable lessons, and the conclusion to the episode is heartwarming. On top of that, it's got some of the best music in the entire series. A Saucer of Loneliness is the second segment of the Season 2 premiere episode, starring Shelley Duvall and directed by John Hancock, original air date September 27, 1986. Margaret, a lonesome middle-aged waitress, is living a dead-end life. She's single and lives with her verbally abusive spinster mother. One day while walking on the beach, a small UFO flies over a crowd of people. It seeks out Margaret specifically and transmits a message telepathically. She's then continuously hounded by people to reveal what it said. A man even feigns interest in her and takes her on a date just to get an answer. Feeling like her life has lost all value, she attempts to drown herself in the ocean, but is saved by a stranger, where they share a beautiful scene on the beach. I love the somber feel of this one. Shelley Duvall is a true professional and gives a great performance. I won't spoil their interaction, but the final scene of the episode is beautiful. While the two strangers speak, you have the beautiful sound of the ocean constantly washing over the nighttime shore. If you're feeling lonely, I definitely suggest this episode for its comforting message. The Hellgramite Method is the 7th episode of Season 3, directed by Gilbert Shilton, original air date November 5th, 1988. Miley is an alcoholic whose marriage is being ruined by his addiction. He's tried numerous times and many methods to quit, but only with short-term success. One night while getting loaded at the bar, a man lights a cigarette for Miley and gives him the matches which advertise the Hellgramite Method. After being scolded by his wife for coming home drunk yet again, he visits the man, one Dr. Murick. He's given a red pill that turns out to have a rare tapeworm. The more he drinks, it feeds the parasite and causes it to grow. The only solution is to starve it by not consuming alcohol, but doing such will cause the worm to attack and cause excruciating internal pain. Our lead actor Timothy Bottoms knocks this out the park. His tension-filled, sober interactions with his wife are authentic, he's great at drunk acting, and his physical performance when the worm is putting him through the works is given 100% of his effort. The Mind of Simon Foster is the 22nd episode of Season 3, directed by Douglas Jackson, original air date February 18, 1989. Set in the year 1999, a man named Simon is flat broke. After pawning his few valuable possessions, the man in the shop realizes Simon is desperate and interests him in memory transference, a black market variation of what's known as memory dipping. The episode explains the pseudoscience more than I'm going to do here, but basically this black market version could transfer memories in a more realistic way than through legal channels, and they're sold to whoever's willing to pay. Simon can't find employment and he has to pay rent somehow, so he's trapped making regular visits to sell off the memories of his life. This is just a great concept. It's world building on a budget, but it is world building. It's a junky future not pretending to be more than it is with robots and holograms and all that. It's a dire situation to imagine yourself in. Would you sell your high school graduation, first kiss, the birth of your child, or your trip to Paris in order to pay the bills? Dealer's Choice is the final segment of Season 1, Episode 8, which originally aired November 15, 1985. It's directed by Wes Craven and starring Morgan Freeman. A group of friends are having one of their regular poker nights. Their friend Norman doesn't show up, and a man they've never met before named Nick substitutes, claiming to be Norman's cousin. After he continuously keeps drawing 3 6s in each of his hands, they soon realize Nick is the devil himself and he's there to take one of their souls. They leave it up to a game to decide whose fate it will be. It could have been an even more tense and creepy story, but the comedic take they went with is not disappointing whatsoever. It isn't the kind of episode that requires much as far as its production is concerned. The cast is what makes this one so funny. Along with Morgan Freeman, you'll see a bunch of familiar character actors who bring the script to life in a particularly amusing way. They all play such an absurd scenario so straight and matter of fact.
What's going on?
Nick's the devil and Peter's playing it.
How much?
$19.
That's if Pete wins. If Pete loses, Nick there gets to take his soul.
Shatterday, directed by Wes Craven, is the first segment of the series premiere. It stars Bruce Willis and originally aired September 27, 1985. Willis plays Peter Novins, a man who accidentally dials his home phone number while at a bar. A voice answers that claims to be the real Peter.
Are you sure this is Klondike 56189? I think I know my own number, pal. Who are you? Peter Novins. Who are you? I'm Peter Novins.
I'm not going to spoil where this episode goes. It's well directed as far as 80s television is concerned and is superbly acted. In my opinion, it's one of Bruce Willis's best performances. It keeps you very intrigued and has a really good ending. No twist, but just simple, good writing. Wong's Lost and Found Emporium is the second segment of Season 1, Episode 9, directed by Paul Lynch with a guest appearance by Stacy Keach Sr., original air date November 22, 1985. A young man finally tracks down a mysterious lost and found he spent 3 years searching for. It's a supernatural antiquity shop that can appear and disappear. There's no staff, only other people searching for things both animate and inanimate. A woman is searching for lost time, a father who's lost the respect of his children, and a woman who needs the help of the main character to find her item. It's a unique story, so to try to explain why it's special without going over every plot point, it's an emotional episode that touches on themes like racial injustice, family dysfunction, and the anxiety of having your youth having passed you by. It's very sentimental and driven by its characters, something I've noticed director Paul Lynch was good at capturing in his episodes. It's also atmospheric. The shop is never ending, filled with all the things that have ever been lost, and you could feel it. Acts of Terror is the 11th episode of Season 3, guest starring Kenneth Welsh and directed by Brad Turner, original air date December 3, 1988. A woman named Louise in an intensely abusive marriage receives a mysterious package from her sister containing a porcelain Doberman.
Oh, Susan, you remembered.
Remembered what?
It was my birthday Friday.
After she acquires this, a living, breathing, vicious Doberman begins to harass her husband whenever she gets angry at him. I say this about a lot of these episodes, but this is another one that's really sold on its performances. Kenneth Welsh as the dirtbag husband plays it perfectly. He's completely horrible, but also convincing. He doesn't feel like an over-the-top caricature of an abuser.
I'm going. Let me see. It's not so bad. Make such a big deal out of it. You're such a little crybaby.
I'm sorry I burnt the eggs.
That won't happen again, will it? Come on. Give me a little kiss.
And Melanie Marin also gives a realistic, sympathetic performance that has you rooting for her all the way.
You broke it. It was the only thing that was really mine. And you broke it. And I hate you.
Time and Teresa Golowitz is the first segment of Season 2, Episode 10, directed by Shelley Levinson, original air date July 10th, 1987. A Broadway composer by the name of Bluestone dies of a heart attack. The devil arrives and offers one wish, anything of his choosing, in exchange for playing his music in hell from time to time. Bluestone makes a wish to hook up with his high school crush, Mary Ellen, and is transported back to 1948. Once there, he's in his teenage body, but with his adult mind. He sees Mary Ellen as just a kid. Bluestone is reminded of a shy, unpopular girl at that party named Teresa who committed suicide that night, and he tries to figure out a way to prevent it. These tender, emotional episodes always get me. The cast of teenagers at the party all do a great job. We really root for our main character and the girl he wants to save. On top of everything, it has some great music by William Goldstein. Night of the Meek is the first segment of Season 1, Episode 13, and is a remake of the 47th episode of the original Twilight Zone. It's directed by Jack Smite and aired on December 20th, 1985. A department store Santa by the name of Henry is spending his lunch break on Christmas Eve drinking. He laments about the fact there will be children who won't get presents on Christmas. He believes he's out of money for alcohol when $2 bills appear in his pocket. He instead gives each one to 2 homeless children outside the bar. Henry then gets in trouble for showing up to work drunk and again mourns the fact there will be families who struggle to put food on the table and keep the lights on. Later that night, after carolers visit him, he wishes he has something to give them. And when he goes to take out the trash, toys spill out of the bag. An endless supply of goods all materialize in this bag, and he hosts a party where he gives everyone in a low-income neighborhood whatever they ask for. I broke down a little more of the plot to this one because it really establishes the kind-heartedness of our main protagonist. I prefer this version over the original 60s one because I find the pacing and acting better. Henry's reaction when he realizes he has toys to give the kids really illustrates how much he just wants the holiday season to be enjoyed by all.
Kids! Kids! I have presents for you! Kids!
The curmudgeon department store owner, Mr. Dundee, believes Henry has stolen all of the goods from his store and demands an answer. I'll at least save the conclusion, but this episode is for sure worth watching once a year. It always makes me tear up. One Life, Furnished in Early Poverty, directed by Don Carlos Dunaway and starring Peter Riegert, original air date December 6, 1985. This is peak television. The basic plot is somewhat familiar as far as the Twilight Zone goes. It involves someone going back in time to when they grew up, much like walking distance from the original series, but it elevates that concept to a higher degree. This episode is a great character study. Gus Rosenthal, a middle-aged writer dissatisfied with life, travels to the home he grew up in when he's suddenly transported back to the 1940s. Looking through the window, he sees himself as a child being scolded and whipped with a belt by his father for stealing. The next day, Gus saves himself from being beaten by bullies and introduces himself to his kid self as Harry, and they strike up a kinship. The episode examines a lot about ourselves and how we're shaped by early adolescence. Something we talk a lot about these days is parenting your inner child. This is something Gus literally gets to do. He has the opportunity to be his own parental figure and try to set himself on the right track, to not be concerned with proving himself and feeling bigger than others, but just to live life and enjoy it.
I decided I was going to show all the kids who made fun of me, all the kids who beat me up, I was going to show them I was somebody. I was going to be a big person, make lots of money, be important.
And you did, huh? You showed him?
Yeah, I did. Trouble is, I was so busy showing them, I never bothered to make much of a life for myself. Bet you wouldn't do anything that silly, Gus, huh?
I guess not.
There's a great scene where adult Gus tells his father Lou about having lost his dad as a teenager and how they never talked while he was alive. No one ever finds out who he actually is, but it's an emotionally impactful scene to see Gus get those things off his chest, being able to speak to his father who he missed out on a relationship with and doing so with the foresight of an adult.
It's just that he reminded me of myself at that age. I was a problem kid, too. My father and I, we just never talked. And then in my teens, he passed away. And it was too late. I'm sorry.
The acting is top-notch and you get so much out of this segment that's only about 25 minutes. It has one of the best closing narrations, but I'll leave that to your discovery. Shadowplay is the first segment of Season 1, Episode 23, directed by Paul Lynch, original air date April 4th, 1986. A remake of the 60-second episode of the original Twilight Zone, we follow a man named Adam who's been sentenced to death for murder. He tries to convince everyone that none of this is real and they all exist in his head as he's been living this day over and over.
Because you're not real. None of this is real.
I can assure you, Mr. Grant, this is very real.
This is a dream.
This is another remake that I prefer over the original. I just find the overall production better acting, better pacing. While Adam's in jail awaiting execution, his attorney Erin explains to the case prosecutor Mark that things aren't right. She feels she's being watched. There were no spectators at the court, no press after the trial. They then begin to question their existence.
I can't get over the feeling that I'm being watched somehow. Even when I'm home alone with the drapes drawn and the lights low, I keep feeling I'm being watched.
This one is spooky in that psychological kind of way. Imagine becoming unsure if the life you have now is your own or if you're just the figment of someone's imagination.
How many years have you been married, Mrs. Ritchie? Why do you want to know? Just curious. How many years?
This was a fun video to make. Revisiting the episodes to collect my thoughts brought back good memories, and I hope anyone who hasn't seen this incarnation of the Twilight Zone or wasn't even aware it existed seeks it out. It definitely needs a Blu-ray release. Not only do I not approve of DVDs to begin with, but the release we have now looks terrible, so Kino Lorber maybe, let's see that happen.